Hey YouTube, welcome back to another History Teacher Reacts video, Mr. Terry, as I continue my search for historical knowledge here on the internet. Alright, today's video comes from our favorite channel, Oversimplified. And you guys made sure to let me know that Oversimplified had uploaded, and they are, it looks like, doing a video on Napoleon. So that's awesome. I think they were kind of foreshadowing this way back in the French Revolution videos that they did. And then they kept making more after that, and I thought that maybe they just weren't going to do it, but now they're back, so that's awesome. I know Napoleon's a very favorite historical figure here on the internet community. I hear people talk about him all the time, and of course he has a big impact on history. So I'm excited to check this out, especially in the oversimplified style that of course they do over there. You know, summer's upon us, and for me that is the time that I love to travel and go on adventures and stuff. And when I'm hitting the road or doing any kind of traveling, I love to listen to audiobooks. And that brings me to today's sponsor, and that is Audible. So Audible is the leading provider of spoken word entertainment and audiobooks, ranging from bestsellers and new releases to celebrity memoirs, languages, business, motivation, and more. And right now, Audible is giving members even more with access to their all-new Plus catalog. Now, all members have access to the growing Plus catalog with thousands of select audiobooks and podcasts, Audible originals, guided fitness and meditation programs, sleep tracks for better rest, and, well, more, all included with your membership. And hey, if you want to learn more about Napoleon, they got a big collection of stuff about him in their catalog too, so you might want to check that out as well. The Audible app is free and can be installed on all smartphones and tablets. You can listen across devices without losing your spot. So visit audible.com/Mr. Terry or text Mr. Terry to 500-500 to start exploring Audible with a free 30-day trial right now. All right, and with that, let's go ahead and get ready to get started. Now, the original video link is down below. Make sure you support Oversimplified. Give it another view. Give it, the video a like if you haven't yet. Be sure to sub if you haven't done that too. And if you like what I'm doing here and you like history content, definitely love to have you as a sub. Thanks for liking the video as well. And let's go ahead and get started.
This video was made possible by NordVPN. Stay safe online by clicking the link below and get a huge discount off a 2-year plan with a risk-free 30-day money-back guarantee. Also, why not grab yourself a character pin of the Little Corporal himself before they sell out? And big shout out to the patrons. Head on over to learn about benefits.
Thank you, patrons of my channel,
and maybe even a little behind the scenes.
Definitely sign up for theirs.
Okay, Mrs. Bonaparte.
Extra content.
This is it. One last push, and we're done.
Oh, baby Napoleon!
It's a general. Oh, and here comes the rest of the army now.
Oh no, who else? The actual army.
The rest of the army.
Whoa! Look at his mom. Welcome, troops. And the derpy horse from that one episode. I always love the opening scenes in these.
Full of great conquerors. Many.
You know what? It's not that far off. Not that giving birth to an army, but Napoleon was into the military stuff at a very young age. I mean, he went to military school. I know they're going to get to all this stuff, but I mean, at a young age, he was into this stuff. So not that far off. He was pretty much a general when he came out.
Very impressive origin stories. For example, Alexander the Great was the son of a king. Julius Caesar came from an
they put...
For
so
example,
glad they always
Alexander
put...
the Great was the son of a king.
Philip, the father of Alexander. That dude was pretty hardcore. He had that scar. I'm glad they put that over his head. I think, or on his face there, over his eye. I think it was when he was captured by enemies or something. He got pretty messed up and had a whole bunch of scars. He saw some stuff. But hey, one thing we see, you know, a lot is these kind of leaders had very influential parents.
Julius Caesar came from an aristocratic family that descended from a goddess. Great conquerors don't usually come from relatively insignificant families living on impoverished islands. True. But as it just so happens, that is where our story begins. In the early 18th century, the island of Corsica was a part of the Republic of Genoa until one day Corsica said, "Hey, we're declaring independence, and it's probably not worth your time to try and stop us." So Genoa said, "You're right, it isn't worth their time. Hey, France, you want to buy this island?" And France said, "Sure thing." And thus, Corsica became France, just in time for Napoleon to be born French.
Year
Many
before.
Corsicans
Technically,
didn't
yeah.
appreciate
It's
their new
Corsican,
conquerors,
if that
however.
means something.
And from an early age, Napoleon
Back
developed
at
some
Munchers
fairly
go home.
anti-French sentiments.
Yeah, wait,
Napoleon's dad, however, quickly embraced his new French overlords, which created some tension between dad and son.
So-
Ooh, look at me. I'm dad. I wear powdered wigs.
So, I think it is important to note, though, that he was born in a time of some civil unrest a little bit, and identity politics, and so like he it's like he was raised in this idea and in this situation about, you don't necessarily call it revolution, but dissent and discontent and multiple opinions and all this stuff. So I mean, I think that's worthy of note. And interesting that his dad, you know, because maybe just the old school people were like more pro-French or whatever, and then now the younger people are more revolutionary, right? Isn't that what happens?
Some tension between dad and son.
Maybe.
Ooh, look at me.
French
I'm
for
dad.
dummies.
I wear powdered wigs and silver-buckled shoes, and I'm a traitor to the Corsican people. Go to your room, Napoleon. No, you go to your room, Dad. Okay. On the other hand, Napoleon adored his mother, who was
Right.
definitely the disciplinarian of the family. And even though she would punish Napoleon severely, he kind of respected that. But Napoleon's parents...
You know, it's not uncommon to see a strong motherly figure in the history of some of these great leaders, especially generals in history, like Genghis Khan, for example, revered his mother. And so interesting trait you find. It's, you know, not just about the dads like we saw with Alexander the Great, although Alexander's mother was also a very powerful, cunning woman that kind of used him too for her own gain, but nevertheless.
Parents wanted the best for their family, and since they were a very minor nobility, they were able to have Napoleon sent off to the shining lights and rat-infested sewage puddles of the big city. It's
privileged.
Napoleon went to military school in France. Okay, Napoleon, why don't you introduce yourself to your new classmates? Well, I'm Napoleon, and I hate all of you. Your farts smell like cheese, you can't pronounce the letter R, all you do is go on strike, and you call eggs oofs like a bunch of big
Oofs.
dumb idiot dingleberries. Okay. Thanks, Napoleon. I hope you like being bullied.
Yeah, maybe they get to more of the stuff. I want to make sure. I think I heard one of the things that when he moved to France to go to school that he was made fun of. I think for his accent. I think there's some kind of like a Corsican accent that stuck with him. You know, as he was learning French and speaking with people that live in France.
And bullied, he was. They picked on him for his Corsican accent, his family's lack of wealth, and it probably didn't help that he also had a bit of a chip on his shoulder, but he could hold his own.
'Cause he
and
was
on an
short?
average day, might be found dishing out ratatouille sandwiches for
Just
breakfast. He spent much of his time alone, and he loved reading about the great conquerors of history. He learned about Julius Caesar, and he wondered if one day he too might have a pizza franchise named after him. He excelled at math and geography, and when he graduated at the age of 16, he was made second lieutenant in an artillery regiment. Now, second lieutenant might sound pretty sweet to a screw-up like you,
Hey, it's
but
me when I'm
Napoleon
not
had a
streaming
little
or
something
making
called
videos.
ambition. Stonks of it. And he wasn't content being just some junior officer. He wanted to rise the ranks.
Right.
Unfortunately for him, that would be a little difficult. Well, Napoleon, I've reviewed your application. It's clear you're very skilled
Much
and
butt
would be a
kissing
perfect fit
behind
for
the scenes,
promotion.
huh?
And Simeon, you're just about the biggest idiot I've ever seen. Your test results suggest you have the mental aptitude of a senile earthworm, and in the part of the form where you list your experience, you seem to have drawn a picture of a gerbil giving birth to a shoe. But your dad is the Marquis de la Fufayette, so you get the job.
Oh, nepotism, man.
French society was just
You know, which I gotta say is ironic because he totally did this when he was a leader. He gave positions to his brother he was very close with and to his friends, family members. He totally did this when he was eventually at the top of things.
closed off. Positions were handed out based on nobility, not talent, and the young Napoleon probably felt stuck. Wouldn't it be nice if, say, a revolution came along and changed all of that?
Good timing.
Well, what are the chances? The French Revolution is here. Bastille toppling, head chopping, king popping. The revolution promised to do away
Robespierre.
with the old social hierarchy and make everyone a
Ancien
little more
regime.
equal. Napoleon may not have cared much for the violent mobs, but if it meant he could rise the ranks, he was in.
I want to interject. So he, you know, the revolution, at the heart of the revolution, especially the violent stuff, he was not around. I mean, and he was out fighting in wars and stuff like that. But of course, he was very well aware of the revolution itself when it was happening. I mean, he had heard about it, from the inside and things like that. And his brother, who I just mentioned, who he was very close to, they would discuss it in letters and things like that. But he was somebody, maybe they get to this, but he was somebody that was actually very torn in the revolution. And the fact that he kind of understood the claims of both sides, between the monarchy and the revolutionaries, and saw points in that. And in, like, you can read these letters, like, to his brother, he talks about how it was basically kind of confusing to him about it. And in one of his famous ones, just paraphrasing, he basically says, like, well, if one was to pick sides, you might as well pick the one that loots and burns and devastates or whatever. I forget the exact wording, but it was pretty much like that, which maybe from that makes him kind of side with the revolutionaries, not from any philosophical perspective, but that they were doing the exciting stuff, and I think he understood, as he's going up for power, that he's going to need to be one that shows himself as somebody that supports the revolution, right? Because he's going to need these people. And I'm sure that the video, as it continues on, will continue to tell that story. But again, no, he was very much into the people that were looting and burning and stuff. But not, again, for the philosophical perspective, but because they were doing the fun stuff.
He began fighting to defend the revolution. He put down a British-sponsored counter-revolution in Toulon and got promoted. A huge one. He put down a royalist uprising in Paris and got promoted.
And this is early 20s here. I mean, he's getting promoted, though, at a very big rate, especially now the revolution is happening, and now they're understanding, I think, that outcomes in these battles are so important that it overcomes any of the nepotism that was happening.
And as his military prowess became more recognized, he was even given his very own army. It was astonishing progress for such a young man of humble origins, and Napoleon's wildest dreams were coming true.
Now, we've seen in history, up with Caesar, up with Alexander, that once you have an army that you are in charge of, if you can make them very loyal to you, then they're going to be there when you are ambitious and other things as well.
But Napoleon also believed he could increase his social status if he married an older rich lady. And so around this time, Napoleon went on the prowl. However, if some sources are to be believed, he was a verified creep.
Napoleon was so ugly, an overall sickly effect was created by his thinness and yellow complexion. Rude.
He reportedly had terrible luck with women, and most wanted nothing to do with
Not
him.
a ladies'
Fortunately,
man.
he eventually met Josephine, an aging single mother who was deeply in debt and needed stability.
He loved her,
so
though.
she agreed to marry him, despite finding him intensely disgusting. Napoleon, you dirty dog, you've done it. Unbeknownst to Napoleon, however, Josephine had a bit of a promiscuous reputation. Hey, Napoleon, I hear you're marrying Josephine.
I don't know this.
Boy, she sure is a great kisser. That's right. Hey, wait, what do you mean she's a great kisser? Hey, Hugo, you hear Napoleon's marrying Josephine? Wow, she sure is a great kisser. Now, hang on just a minute. Hey, everyone, Napoleon's marrying Josephine. Oh, yeah,
Oh.
Sure is a great kisser. Real good at kissing.
Oh, no.
Oh, for goodness sake, is there anyone here who hasn't kissed my wife? Yeah, you.
Oh!
As Napoleon fell madly in love with his new wife.
Now, how can we not bring up the double standard of all this stuff? Every guy in that room had done the same thing, but right? Because it's a woman, it gets talked about. Total double standard. They're all doing the same things.
She fell madly in love with a man named Hippolyte. It wouldn't be long, however, before Napoleon would leave home and go to war.
Sounds terrible.
Because while France was having its revolution, tensions in Europe were rising.
Right.
Hey, Austria, you'll never guess what we
like
just
this.
did. What's that, France? I got 2 words for you. Revolution. We totally just socked it to our monarchy. What? Dude, the rest of us are monarchies.
Yeah.
You've just totally threatened the balance of power
Austria's
in
gonna be
Europe.
especially
Now we
pissed.
have to worry about our stinky peasants rising up against us. I mean, holy hell, your queen is... Okay.
Oh, they should have finished that. Your queen. That would have been big. They need to talk about that because the Queen of France is Austrian. Marie Antoinette they were set up. She's basically an Austrian princess, pretty much. And they executed her, right? So Austria, more than any other country, had bone to pick with France. In fact, not only they executed one of their family members, but and they're probably getting to this here, was that the other monarchies of France, even though if they didn't like France, did not like that the revolution was happening, because the ideals of it could potentially spread to their countries if the people have these rights and stuff they're protesting for, and grievances. Those grievances might be similar to what's happening in a place like, you know, Austria or Britain or Russia, wherever, and that could then inspire revolutions in those countries. So again, even if you have beef with France, you did not like the revolution, so you wanted it to be stopped. I think that's what we're getting to here. I'll go back 5 seconds.
Peasants rising up against us. I mean, holy hell, your queen is... Okay, France, this is pretty awkward.
He's got a
and the rest of Europe is probably itching to
beret.
give you a wedgie. But you're not ready for a war yet. So you gotta be cool, man. It's absolutely crucial that you say something to defuse the situation right now.
Preposterous!
I declare war.
Sacre bleu!
So France ended up at war with basically the rest of
Yep.
Europe, and the war of the First Coalition began. At first, France
5 years.
struggled, but then they started to do surprisingly well, and in many conquered territories, they began to establish sister republics, exporting their revolutionary ideas across Europe. In 1796,
God, can we just appreciate, if you want to call it that, how terrible the borders are and so complicated, all these kingdoms and stuff in Europe. Like, it was so bad in the Holy Roman Empire's heyday, and it's still, like, so complicated.
planned a three-pronged attack to take Vienna
In this
and knock
time,
Austria
especially.
out of the war, with two magnificent armies in the north to kick ass, and Napoleon in the south as a bit of a diversion. For the first time, Napoleon would lead a military campaign. This was his chance to prove himself, to be somebody. And what a general he proved to be. The army he was given were demoralized, lacking equipment, and underpaid. But Napoleon galvanized them with inspirational
These are
speeches,
delicious.
and he took them into Italy. He was outnumbered, and his campaign was partially meant to be a sideshow, but he made it the main show. While the two
took it
northern
over.
armies were being held back, Napoleon made staggering progress. In a signature Napoleon move, he masterfully split his enemies into two and took them on separately, knocking Sardinia out of the war and putting the Austrians on the run. At the famous Battle of Lodi, he was in the fray, aiming the cannons himself, getting covered in mud, and earning the
Right
total
there with him.
respect of his men. They were
That's so important, because like his idols, again, if we're just going to keep referencing Caesar and Alexander the Great, got a lot of support because they were fighters themselves. I mean, they were out there and gained a lot of respect. You find that very common with popular generals in history, is that's how they got their respect, is because they were out risking themselves too.
respected him so much that when he ordered an almost suicidal assault on the only bridge in town, his men threw
did it.
themselves at it and took it despite fierce Austrian resistance. For Napoleon, it was all he needed to confirm that he was the greatest human who had ever existed.
Foresaw what I might be. Already I felt the earth flee from beneath me, as if I were being carried into the sky. Jeez.
Wow, Napoleon, you're pretty great at this
Destiny,
military stuff.
huh?
Just be careful your head doesn't get too big. What did you just say to me, you little prick? And as Napoleon swept through northern Italy, the Italians cheered
Success
his
goes to your
arrival.
head, man.
Yes, I'm here to liberate you from your cruel Austrian oppressors
But
and replace them with French ones.
yep.
Napoleon plundered
Yeah,
his
so this is going to be a common thing that you're seeing. Because, again, I was telling you how there's a little bit of irony in that, again, he was, justifiably upset when he was young that he wasn't getting promoted. He was getting passed up by people far less proficient. But because he's going to, replace some of these leaders, again, with family members and things like that. And I kind of tell this to my students, which is this, like, he would conquer these places. And yeah, in a lot of these cases, the people might be like, oh, yay, great. We didn't like the previous monarchy, and this revolution that's been going on in France, like, has a lot of ideas that are great. We'd love to adopt them. But we don't want to be ruled by you. We don't want to be ruled by you. Thank you for what you brought, but it's time to go home. You're overstaying your welcome. Thanks for the gifts, but Christmas is over. You need to go home. And that's not what his ambitions are. Dude's going to be an emperor one day. He wants to create an empire and rule. So
went, sending riches back to France to help its economy,
And
but
that
also
is not
paying his men the first
plundering
real money they'd
the
seen in
land.
years. The Pope had been supporting the Austrians, so Napoleon briefly went to go give him a slap. And as he began to approach Vienna, the exhausted Austrians were forced to make peace. with Napoleon overseeing negotiations himself. He had just single-handedly knocked Austria out of the war.
Right, they call these forced alliances. He did a lot of that, basically forced them into treaties where it's like, hey, you can just stop fighting us and maybe even join us, or, you know, feel our wrath. And for most of those countries, it was better off just to join him or to back out, to continue on.
And by the way, he was only 28, so maybe it's about time you moved out of your dad's attic. In the Italian territories he had conquered, Napoleon established new French sister republics, even writing constitutions and organizing governments himself. Not something a general generally does. When he got back to France, he was hailed as a hero, and the extremely unpopular government were concerned he might get some power-hungry ideas. So they agreed he should go far away from
Sounds a little Caesar-ish, huh, doesn't it? Now, she'll get to the current government that they had there, but it had all kinds of issues. Go back here.
Popular government were concerned he might get some power-hungry ideas. So they agreed he should go far away from France to Egypt, where he could maybe undermine British access to India. Napoleon was eager to win more glory, so he brought with him a team of scholars, and he was like, whoa, it's a freaky man-cat. Whoa, it's a big stick. Whoa, it's an ugly horse. Whoa, it's a stumpy little manlet. Hey, I'm actually average height for the time.
Of course, they have to do that. The biggest misconception that nobody believes, nobody thinks that, but everyone thinks they're high and mighty when they can say, actually, Napoleon was average height for his time. Oh, I bet so many people have put that in comments on YouTube and stuff. I got to go back, though, to this whole Egypt deal. So, I mean, they're simply saying that he's there almost like against his will or whatever. But I don't know about that. I don't think... I think he likes being here. And they're saying it's about trying to hurt the British, who, again, were using Egypt to link... the Mediterranean and Indian Oceans, because they have their biggest colonies, India, and to control that region around the Suez and all that, where they can have more access to trade. But I think there's an element to understand about Egypt too that harkens back to his influence. In that, again, going to two famous influences of him, Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, both had campaigns in Egypt. And those two people, especially going back to Alexander, actually specifically Alexander, they revered Egypt. The Greeks don't do Alexander was Macedonian, not Greek. You know what I mean. Revered the Egyptians. That was their big influence of their culture, the people they really respected. And when Alexander conquered Egypt, that was a big thing. That was a huge thing for him, is going and conquering and ruling, and he was beating out the Persians and stuff and liberating them, and that was a big part of that, because it's like Egypt's such a important part of history. And then Julius Caesar took over Egypt as well, and I think there might be an element of pride that Napoleon has here, even though it's a very different Egypt in this time in the early 1800s, but I think there's an element of there. He's walking in the footsteps of his influences, and that's worth just as much as blocking any access to the British, direct access they might have to the Red Sea so they can get to India. I think there's some ego in here too. I think that's out there. Now, you talked about the scholars. Now, I don't know if they're going to talk about this, but I gotta say it in case they don't get it. Is although the French will fail to take Egypt, an extremely influential thing happened, and that a lot of those scholars and people that came in there, which again, by the way, leads me more into about how Napoleon was very interested in the culture of Egypt and its history, because they bring in these archaeologists and scholars. But then, of course, finding one of the most important archaeological findings in modern history, and that is the Rosetta Stone, which is an inscription on stone that, to make a long story short, is how we were able to translate hieroglyphics, Egyptian hieroglyphics, in the modern day, because that knowledge had been lost for a long time, and they were able to use that to translate, which opened up the whole door to modern Egyptology here. So that's the most important thing, really, in the historical sense of France's dealings in Egypt at this time.
But then British Admiral Nelson came down and wrecked his fleet, and an Anglo-Ottoman force defeated him at Acre, so Napoleon abandoned his men and went back to France. His campaign in Egypt hadn't gone quite as planned, but one thing you should know about Napoleon was that he was a skilled propagandist. He published his own newspapers that sometimes exaggerated his achievements, and even commissioned paintings that generally made him look cool. So when he returned to Paris,
there are so many paintings, these glorified paintings that were all about, again, making him larger than life. There's so many ones, like the cool Battle of the Pyramids, which they totally marketed as Battle at the Pyramids in Egypt there, that has some cool some art to it. But there's so much of that. It's just ego boost and marketing yourself.
he was yet again hailed as a hero, and he began to get some power-hungry ideas. First, however, he had a bit of a problem to deal with. See, he had learned something shocking about his dear wife. Really, Josephine?
Cheating?
This guy?
With, what's
I'm
his
just
name?
as tall as
Hippo?
him. I'm
Hippopotamus?
sorry. I swear. Now that you're becoming famous, I'll never do it again. Make sure you don't. I've never stooped so low as to cheat on you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'll be in this room consulting my generals for the next 30 minutes.
Right.
And by consulting, I mean boinking. By my generals, I mean this woman.
Yep.
And by 30 minutes, I mean 2 seconds.
Oh!
His wife, Napoleon. I mean 2 seconds.
True story. See, why didn't the British just propaganda this rather than lie about his height? That's way more demasculating.
Having dealt with his wife, Napoleon was then approached by a very influential politician who said he had an idea. He wanted to stage a coup against the deeply unpopular government and needed the extremely popular Napoleon's help.
Makes sense. Now, got to set up the context here, because this new Republican government that is in France is so weak. I mean, they were unable at all to address the issues that led to the revolution, too. The economic issues, the people literally starving, the social inequalities of the Ancien regime, all that stuff. I mean, this new government was able to do it. They don't have much power at all. I mean, a very powerful absolute monarchy before them couldn't address the problem. So, you know, what good were these people going to be able to do in a short period of time? So, yeah, it's power vacuum in France.
Napoleon thought that was just the darn tootinest idea. The plan was to trap the government and convince them to voluntarily give up their power. And here's how they did it. Hey guys, oh my gosh, quick! There's a dangerous Jacobin plot to overthrow you, which we definitely aren't just making up. Better get inside this cage.
The Jacobins are the much more extreme political group during the revolution. In the early part, they were like the only ones really talking about how early on it was a minority voice that the monarchy should actually be abolished completely, because early in the French Revolution, people were just talking about doing a constitutional monarchy, kind of like Britain did, but it was much more of a fringe group like the Jacobins that wanted to go much further.
So we can protect you.
All right, go in the cage.
Okay. Gentlemen, we got him. In this case,
I don't know that story. Did they actually like lock them up and force them? I don't know the specifics of that. Let me know.
Cage was an isolated palace outside of Paris, with no one around but Napoleon and his army. With the government inside, Napoleon then entered, and a pretty chaotic event ensued, during which the government didn't seem entirely sure what was going on, Napoleon's men didn't seem entirely sure what was going on, and Napoleon himself didn't seem entirely sure what was going on. But thankfully, Napoleon's brother Lucien, president of the lower house, managed to regain control, and the remaining councilmen were intimidated into creating a new constitution. And thus, a new government was formed.
The consulate.
With 3 consuls in charge.
I kind of talk about this as like what they didn't really have at this time in this early government was what would resemble like an executive branch like you have in the United States. It had a legislative body and a couple houses and stuff, but didn't necessarily have a legislative body. And I think that consulate is maybe a little bit closer to what you're seeing here, but it's a very small group. Right, the executive branch in the United States has, the president, vice president, but also has a cabinet, has a bunch of other people, much more than the 3 positions they're going to have here.
But after Napoleon did some rewriting, in the end, there was really only one man in charge, the first consul. Him.
Yep.
And over the next few years, he worked to consolidate even more power. And
so the highest position, he now holds the highest political office. It's just been created, but the highest political office in France now.
He became a dictator in total control of France. And by the way, he was only 30, so maybe it's about time you washed your disgusting bed sheets. France
I'll be honest, I
was
eat on my bed sheets all the
greatest
time,
military
and
leader
they can get
of the
gross.
time. Possibly the greatest? Or definitely? Well, now is his chance to prove it. See, back when Napoleon was still in Egypt, being Indiana Jones.
Hey, yeah.
Back home, France was in France.
Oh, why didn't he talk about the Rosetta Stone? Yeah, there it is. That's it. So the Rosetta Stone is written in 3 languages. It was produced during the Greek Ptolemaic era when they ruled Egypt. So they would on this here, there's a decree kind of thing where the Greeks would publish stuff in multiple languages because the Ptolemaic dynasty was Greek and spoke Greek, so they would do it. They had the more formalized Egyptian hieroglyphics, and then they had the more like regular script the Egyptians had, and an important one for historically speaking was the bottom one on here, and that is in Greek. And the good thing about that is Greek has been continually this language continually spoken and written going back well before this time. So they used the Greek to translate the hieroglyphics, and that started to open kind of those doors of translating Egyptian hieroglyphics. So anyway, wish they would talk about this more. It's very cool.
Still in Egypt, being Indiana
Maybe they
Jones.
do later. But
Back home, France was in France, being France. They had conquered even more territory, and they were like, hey Piedmont, you get revolutionary ideals. Hey Switzerland,
You get it.
revolutionary ideals. And Rome, you get revolutionary ideals. Everybody gets revolutionary. Oh, hey guys, nice sledgehammers. And
Russia's
Naples,
not down,
very
Britain,
cool nail gun.
Austria.
You guys here to get some revolutionary ideals?
nail gun.
As France was still spreading the revolution, and with Napoleon busy in Egypt, the European powers felt the time was right for round 2, and the War of the Second Coalition began.
Second one.
And
3
this time,
years.
their big bad boy buddy Russia was here to bang some French boys back to Bordeaux. And bang them, they did. France
Ooh.
got blasted. But then Russia pulled out after stalling in Switzerland, and now that Napoleon was in charge of the country, he was ready to start blasting right back. He took command of the Army of the Reserve, and he brought the fight to the Austrians. Now, there are many traits that made Napoleon a great military leader. I already mentioned one of them,
Okay.
how he was one of the boys and commanded the
Right.
total loyalty
He's
of
out
his
on the
men.
front lines.
But now we see a second reason, the element of surprise. In 1800, Napoleon moved to Geneva, and it looked like he was probably going to take on the Austrian forces in Germany. There's no way he'd be crazy enough to move his entire army
Cray.
south through the Alps as a surprise attack on the Austrians besieging Genoa. Oh, Napoleon's moving his entire army south through the Alps as a surprise attack on the Austrians besieging Genoa. Napoleon's crossing of the Alps is legendary, and you may have seen one of the most famous paintings of the general,
But did he do it on elephants and with elephants, like Hannibal?
popping a sick wheelie on his majestic stallion, surrounded
Sick
by
wheelie.
dangerous mountain terrain. Of course, in real life,
Oh wait, did that? I didn't look close. That had you can see in the bottom Hannibal. They have a Hannibal in there. They're saying like now he's in the line of these famous leaders that have actually been able to bring armies across the Alps. Now it was way
popping
lamer.
a sick wheelie on his majestic stallion, surrounded by dangerous mountain terrain. Of course, in real life, he made the crossing on a depressed
Ha!
mule. But that's not as cool.
Even
When he
lamer.
emerged in Italy, the Austrians expected him to
Even
come break
lamer
their
than we
siege.
thought.
But Napoleon went for their supply line near Milan, forcing the Austrians to meet
Milano.
Napoleon head-on at the famous Battle of Marengo. The Austrians initially clobbered the outnumbered French, and they were like, hooray, we won. But then a few hours later, Napoleon showed up again with an even bigger army, and he clobbered them right back. Holy cow,
French
this
start
tiny
off
little
quickly, but
fun-sized
they
French guy is
return
running
in
rings
greater
around us.
numbers.
Hey, I'm average height for the time, you jerk! After General Moreau's victory at Hohenlinden,
Gotta keep
Vienna
bringing that
was
up.
exposed, and the Austrians again sued for peace. Just like the war of the First Coalition, the Second Coalition ended in another French victory.
dubs.
But in many ways, they both felt more like Napoleon victories.
Yeah.
Only the
He
UK
got all the
remained
credit.
at war with Napoleon, and they were using their powerful navy to blockade French ports and were even seizing the cargoes of neutral
Yeah.
ships. Obviously, everyone else got
Tough
pretty
British
pissed off
Navy.
that the British were interfering with their trade. So in response, they formed a league, and they embargoed the UK right back. Neutral countries protecting their own interests? That's offensive. So Britain went to Copenhagen and blew a bunch
Come
of
on,
stuff
Britain.
up, and the league disbanded. But because the UK's economy was pretty bust, they decided to sign a treaty with France in 1802. For the first time in a long time, Europe was at peace.
Yay.
Congratulations, sire.
And it was over.
You've achieved
Then it
peace.
ended.
Yes, Pierre, but not for long. I still don't trust those dirty Brits. Did you hear they've been calling me the Bony Man? What does that even mean? Keep an eye on them, would you? I can't, sire. Why not? Because they use NordVPN.
Segue.
How would you like to spend 12 hours a day on your favorite website ever without the fear of your data being stolen?
What's
Then you
Dress
need
a Cat? Is that
NordVPN.
really a website?
NordVPN has thousands of secure servers in
Dude, they've
59
done a bunch of
countries,
NordVPN
allowing you to
ads.
safely surf the net at the fastest possible speed while staying away from online threats.
Just imagine
thanks to
how
the
much
anti-malware tool,
NordVPN
CyberSec.
would need to pay
NordVPN
for this.
comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, and now you can take advantage of their new password manager, NordPass, and new encrypted cloud
Full
storage
integration
solution,
for,
NordLocker. NordVPN lets you search for better deals in other territories and unlock content
a video
not
that's gonna
available in your
instantly get
country,
millions of
like
views.
oversimplified videos, for example. It's incredibly easy to use. With just a click of a button, you can head up to Canada and watch some sweet Canadian TV, just like that. Go to nordvpn.com/oversimplified
Ads are so
to
much
get
better
a
than
2-year plan
my
plus
ads I
one
make.
additional month with a huge discount. That's nordvpn.com.
I love you, Audible.
/oversimplified. And as always, you'll be supporting my channel. So thank you. Now where were we? Oh yeah. Crossing the Alps, defeating the Austrians, and Europe at peace. What a meteoric rise it had been for the young Corsican. He had just taken charge of a nation that appeared to be losing a war and turned it all around, securing French gains in Europe. But there was now a big question. You see, throughout the chaotic French Revolution, French governments had struggled to keep the economy afloat. They
gotta
often
fix
didn't
it.
have a whole lot of support, and they frequently came and went.
I mean, that's the thing in the end. Like, Napoleon can do all this stuff, but the people still need change. I mean, they revolted for a reason. They're supporting him. They have hopes, I guess, for him. You can do all this stuff, but in the end, if you can't fix the problems, you're not going to be in power very long.
Would Napoleon finally be the man who could stick around? Military victories were one thing, but could the general also govern? Spoiler alert. Yes. The economy's crumbling? Well, then why don't you have yourself a new national bank, currency reform, and improved taxation and welfare systems? The legal system
Ton
is
of
an
changes.
incoherent mess? Well, then why don't we
Napoleonic
nicely
Code.
wrap all those civil laws up into one new centralized legal code?
Kind of similar. Reminds me of we talk about famous law codes in history, and especially in this region, a couple you referred to. Going to go to like Hammurabi, first law codes basically ever put into writing. Fast forward to the total revamping of laws that Emperor Justinian did in the Byzantine Empire, making a lot of complicated things and streamline them and get out bad ones, just really overhaul things. And then Napoleonic Code is something that you would probably put in there too, almost at that level of that, because a lot of that's going to be copied later on, but it really streamlined the process there. Look, who's this guy?
Corrupt government officials? Throw them in the
Oh,
trash.
yeah.
Bad infrastructure? Throw it in the trash. Women's rights? Throw them in the trash.
Yep.
Wait, really?
Yep.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, while Napoleon was building on the equality of the revolution, he also largely scaled back rights for certain groups, and husbands had full legal control over their wives. But come on, ladies. Maybe let men have a slice of the pie for once. Okay?
Yeah, you know, kind of we'd wonder about that. And we talk about this in my class about how he made all these changes and stuff. And that's where people talk about how, you know, like was he fully a man of the revolution's ideas, or was he simply exploiting the revolution for his own personal gain? Because yeah, he did a lot of things that were very much like for the revolution. There was still expanded rights, there was more education, and it still abolished the social system and all that stuff. But like women, again, were a group that made big strides during the revolution, and he reversed that big time. And where does that come from? Again, if you want to refer back to his influences, maybe he would look at someone, again, like the Greeks or the Romans, who had very patriarchal societies. They were very male-dominated societies. And maybe he also felt that was, for whatever reason, one of the reasons why they had such stability and success was having that type of structure and gender roles and all that stuff. Maybe. Or maybe he just felt threatened by women.
Napoleon further reformed education, ensuring a system based on
There's
individual
his
ability,
buddy's name
meaning
again.
now Simeon had to compete with everyone else, and Napoleon could get the cream of the crop to help him run the republic. But he wasn't just building on the ideas of the revolution.
But again, I gotta say, it wasn't all just meritocracy there. He put in, like we said, family members and friends into high positions, streamlined them right to the top.
The revolution had led to a lot of chaos, and Napoleon needed stability. so he rolled back a couple things, most notably with religion. The revolution had pretty much kicked the Catholic Church to the curb, but Napoleon understood that since many French citizens still considered themselves Catholic, that could be a problem. So he came to an agreement with the Pope and brought back the Church, only this time with some pretty hefty power limitations. He also ensured freedom for other religions, and is often noted for his positive treatment of Jewish people at a time of widespread anti-Semitism. But while all of this may make
Okay. Not going over a lot of the religious changes that he put in. So that's pretty big. I mean, a lot of that had been done before like he officially kind of took political power. But a little bit of background there. The Catholic Church was extremely influential in France. Go back to the era of their France's absolute monarchy. One of the reasons why the royal family in France had so much power is they had the support of the church. And one reason why the church supported them is the church got a ton of privileges in France. They controlled 10% about of all the land in France, which is a lot, and didn't pay taxes on it, which means all the wealth that they generate from their property did not go back into the French economy and back to French society. And that was a huge economic hole in society, amongst others. But, and then as a kind of part of the deal that Catholicism was going to be the official religion. And even, during, because this is post Protestant Reformation, they persecuted, the royal family persecuted Protestants greatly, which a lot of them ended up leaving, France, which hurt their economy, by the way, as well. And so again, they willed a ton of privilege there. And a product of the revolution was they took control of the lands of the church. I think they also passed laws and stuff where either the French government or the French population could have more influence in who are the leading officials from the church, like maybe elect in France. So whether that's like electing bishops and stuff like that. So they took a lot of power from the church. But again, he needs powerful allies too. And a lot of people, they try to abolish it. People like Robespierre want to basically get rid of religion completely. But a lot of people, of course, were still devout, so they wanted to see that back. So might have scored some points with him, score some points back from the church with that. Everything always has a slant for Napoleon. All this stuff always has a slant that how is it going to help him? There always is. There's always a slant.
Napoleon sounded like a pretty stand-up dude. It's good to note that he believed in religious freedom because he thought it was a powerful tool to keep the poor from eating the rich, or something like that.
Religion keeps the rich
Napoleon's
from...
tool to keep the poor from eating the rich, or something.
Religion keeps the rich from being massacred by the poor.
Like that.
Not wrong.
Napoleon's aim was to end the chaos of the revolution and finally create a stable and prospering French republic. And in that aim, he seemed to be largely successful and generally popular with the people of France. He officially declared that the revolution is over, adding, "I am the revolution."
Ended by the ideals which started.
Could be seen for miles. Of course, not everyone was happy with Napoleon's reforms. Conservatives felt he was too radical. Radicals felt he was too conservative. Yeah. But since Napoleon was a dictator, opposition could usually be stamped out with some good old-fashioned iron fisting.
Hey, maybe that means you're right. If you find yourself, the radicals on both sides won't believe you're going too far enough. Maybe that's a good thing. You find yourself more in a more compromising position.
In 1804, Napoleon took one last major step. After some failed attempts were made to assassinate him, he wanted to strengthen his position and ensure his dynasty could live on after him. And so he decided being first consul for life simply wasn't quite enough. He decided he should become emperor. He held a vote, asking the French people if they were cool with the idea, and they returned a definitely not rigged 99.9% in favor.
Wait.
On this man. And so
So one of the things I've wanted to learn, probably the thing I wanted to learn most in this series, or what I wanted from the series, is talk about his, I guess, kind of the logistics of his political rise. Because he's getting this political power. He was able to get a new constitution that created a consulate, and then able to become first consul, and now able to become emperor. Like, how is this happening? Because, and this is where the stuff's confusing, and his whole reign for a lot of people, and I get this across in my class, though, that it's like this guy seems like he embodies like most of everything that the French had just fought against and had abolished and literally killed their monarchy over. they're going to replace a monarch with an emperor. You know what I mean? But again, that's where I guess the masterful nature of Napoleon at being able to do this and use the revolution and use his success into creating this position for himself. Again, in the wake of France just abolishing such a thing. Now, what I didn't know was this actually like a thing? They actually like voted for him to be emperor, and it was 99.9%. There's no way that's even close to what would it have been. There's no way it would have been that supportive. No way.
0.9% in favor. The balls on this man. And so on the 2nd of December, 1804, in an elaborate ceremony at Notre Dame, Napoleon was made emperor.
Yep.
The Pope was even invited to attend, and normally he would crown an emperor. But to
Yeah.
make sure everyone knew this wasn't some Charlemagne-style
like the Holy
circular
Roman
power
Empire.
division, Napoleon lifted the crown and placed it on his own head.
Crown
Like I
yourself.
said, the ball's on this man. He was
Flex
now
move right
emperor
there. Just
of
a
the French.
flex.
Well, Napoleon, you were a general. Then you became first consul for life, and now you're an
Yeah, you should be
emperor.
cool now,
Is
right?
it
You're good.
Enough yet? Is your ambition finally satisfied?
Yeah, it should be.
I don't know, Pierre. What comes after emperor? I would say God, sire. You
Oh, man.
want to be a god?
Yep.
Yes. I'll put it down under maybe. Okay, everyone.
Napoleon, just
what
stop
the
there,
hell
man.
is going on? This Corsican guy showed up out of nowhere, and he's kicking our ass.
Pressure,
He's
UK,
exporting the
Sweden,
ideas of the
Russia.
French Revolution wherever he goes, and he just declared himself king of Italy and emperor. He can't do that. I'm the emperor. Oh, hey, fellow monarchs. I see you're having a monarch party. My invite must have got lost in the mail. I'll just set up a spot right here. Wow. You don't belong here, Napoleon. We're coming to take you down. I'd like to see you try. Oh, I'm so scared I just pooed my
Arm.
pants. Hey, everyone.
What?
I just pooed my pants. No, but I did just poo my pants. Before Napoleon had even declared himself emperor, the British had already redeclared war on
Nice.
France because both sides had been violating their previous treaty. Napoleon immediately occupied Hanover and then began making plans for a great British invasion.
Come
partially
on,
paid for
nobody
by selling
invades
a huge
Britain.
chunk of land to the United States. Napoleon gathered his
Romans.
army along the English Channel. But here was the problem. While Napoleon's powerful army would almost certainly obliterate the British on land,
Sure.
there was very little chance he'd actually make it
You're
across
not
the
beating the
channel
British
because
deep.
Britannia ruled the waves. This power dynamic would keep the two traditional enemies from engaging in much real direct
Mistress of the
combat
sea,
throughout the
master of the
Napoleonic Wars.
continents.
However, the British had something else up their sleeve: copious amounts of money. They were willing to throw cash at anyone who would go to war against Napoleon, and there were plenty of takers: Austria, Russia, Naples, and Sweden, hoping to put Napoleon's France back in its place, formed
Make it
a
rain,
third
Britain.
coalition
Make it rain.
against France.
Third.
The
This one's
coalition
3
forces
years.
probably thought that this time they stood a chance. They weren't prepared for the total humiliation they were about to suffer. The War of the Third Coalition was Napoleon at his best. We've already learned 2 ways in which Napoleon was a great military commander, but here comes one of the biggest reasons: speed. He had reorganized his army into corps, which were themselves basically
Blitzkrieg.
small armies. Each
French
had their
version.
own infantry, cavalry, and artillery, and as a result, was able to act more independently. They spread out through the countryside, and by living off the land rather than relying on heavy supply trains, they were able to move extremely quickly.
Seems like if you with that much spreading of leadership, you would have to have a lot of trust. Like if you're Napoleon, for these leaders that they're actually going to work together to coordinate these type of attacks.
Napoleon would traverse massive distances, outmaneuver his enemies, isolate them, and then move in for the kill before they even knew what was going on. Lightning warfare leading to total destruction. Would you like to see him do it? Here we go. Part of the coalition's plan was for the Russians to meet up with the
Here we go.
Austrians and take on Napoleon
Take
together.
notes, quiz after the
Combined,
video.
They could turn the tide against him, so Napoleon needed to stop them from ever meeting. But he's all the way over in Boulogne. No problem. In a matter of weeks, Napoleon marched 200,000 men in secret, encircling Austrian General Mack and capturing
there
his
that
entire army. A devastating blow. Napoleon later remarked, "I have destroyed the Austrian army by simply marching." Next, he turned to face the approaching Russians. Okay, it looks like the French are coming for us, but check this out. I've got an amazing idea. When they approach, we run away. Sir, you're a
Strategically.
genius. The Russians began to retreat.
Russians have done this a bunch of times. They do these organized retreats, you know. They work.
with Napoleon giving chase, and since his tactics relied on quick victories, this could be a problem, especially because the longer the war went on, the more likely it looked other countries may join the coalition against
Russia.
him. But Napoleon knew the Russian Tsar, Alexander I, was young and seeking glory, so he came up with an idea to lure him in. He sent him a message. What does it say? It says, "Hello, I'm just a little baby boy, and I'm very scared." Are you talking like that, or is he? He is, sir. Why is he doing that? I don't know, but it's very cute, helpless, and vulnerable. A little
Fake, though? Let
baby
their guard
boy,
down?
eh? Very scared, eh? Cute, eh? Boris, get my crossbow. We're going hunting. The Allied forces turned to face Napoleon, who they now believed was in a vulnerable position. He was set up at Austerlitz, and to make it look like
By the way, yes, the flags are inaccurate for the time period. Don't be that guy, okay? Don't be that snob.
he was retreating, he had even evacuated the high ground. A thick fog set in, obscuring Napoleon's center, as the Allies took the bait and set up on the heights. From there, they spotted Napoleon's very weak-looking right flank, and they descended the heights to go get it. Little did they know, it was exactly what Napoleon was hoping they'd do. The next thing they knew, a large French force was emerging from the fog, launching a huge central assault up the hill. They swung around, crushing the Allies, and as men attempted to
They
flee
did it.
across the frozen lakes, Napoleon ordered his artillery to fire on the ice, causing an unknown number to drown. But
Dang.
he told me he was just
Blast
a little
the
baby
ice.
boy. What happened? He tricked you, sir. You mean I was the little baby boy all along? It was Napoleon's masterpiece, and Austria were
Wow.
once again forced to make peace with France. Then, with the French conquest of Naples in 1806, the War of the Third Coalition ended as yet another
Dang.
Napoleon
3-0.
This was the third time Napoleon had to give Austrian Emperor Francis a good spanking. And so, with the peace treaty in 1805, Napoleon was determined to punish him.
Yeah.
He was forced to give up territory, hand over significant compensation, and promised never to fight Napoleon again.
So Napoleon negotiated. He always negotiated from a position of strength and forced a bunch of these alliances out there. And for a lot of these countries, they had no choice. It ended up being a better deal than what they would have. Well, they wouldn't have had a deal at all if they'd continued, because the French would have beat them.
Now, Russia, Sweden, and the UK remained at war with France, but none were able to offer much of a threat. And so, Napoleon got to work strengthening his grip over Europe. He gave out rule of captured territories to his family and friends, and most notably, he established a new confederation in Germany, with himself as its protector. Seeing his influence in Germany being wiped
Goodbye,
away, Emperor
HRE.
Francis acknowledged reality and officially dissolved the Holy
Most
Roman
overrated
Empire, an
empire.
entity that had existed for over 1,000 years. But it
Not
wasn't
holy,
all good
not
news for
Roman, not
Napoleon.
an empire.
For one thing, Spain had earlier allied with France in 1804 because the British just couldn't help themselves from blowing up Spanish ships, and Napoleon hoped a combined French-Spanish fleet would eventually be able to invade England. Unfortunately, he received word that British Admiral Nelson had engaged his fleet at Trafalgar. Normally, naval battles looked like this, but in this case, Nelson did this.
know
Was
that
it
from
because
Assassin's
he was
Creed.
an idiot? No, it's because he was a genius. He successfully punched through the Franco-Spanish line and unleashed hell.
That's more like ancient naval battles where they would just ram each other like triremes.
His victory ensured British control of the sea, and his death during the battle
Yeah.
made him a legend. Napoleon's hopes for a future British invasion
Nope.
were gone.
Will not be a
But not
land-based
just that.
or
Napoleon was also hoping to
ocean-based
secure
empire.
peace on the continent, but that wasn't looking likely because the Prussian king was under pressure from his wife. Frederick, he's established a confederation in our turf, and he told us he'd give us Hanover, but then offered it to the British. You have to declare war on him. What is it with you and war? What is it with you and being a cupcake? Go to war! Okay. In October 1806, Prussia, with its famed military tradition, joined the coalition and declared war, beginning the War of the Fourth Coalition. Unfortunately, Prussian King Frederick William III wasn't the smartest tool in the shed. Look at him over there, being all French. Makes me sick.
Being all
Boys,
French.
we'll get him this time. But here's the thing. This time, we have to stick together. Do not under any circumstances face Napoleon by yourself. You all saw what happened to Austria. Hey, where'd Fred go? Hey, you jerk. Think you're some kind of big shot? Huh? Want to tangle with Fred? You don't got the cojones. We're screwed. Without
do it.
consulting its allies, Prussia had gone ahead and sent Napoleon an ultimatum, demanding he move all his forces out of Germany. Now, some of you watching this video probably can't even wipe your own bum yet, but even you know, you don't just send Napoleon an ultimatum. Obviously, Napoleon went in for the kill. Prussia's army was quite outdated.
So yeah,
when they met-
he wants deals where he has the leverage.
Napoleon at the twin battles of Jena and Auerstedt, it wasn't even close. Even Marshal Davout's heavily outnumbered corps at Auerstedt sent the Prussians running, and Napoleon carried out a ruthless pursuit of his fleeing enemy, taking Berlin and within a single month decimating the Prussian forces. Frederick William and the remnants of his army moved to the east. At this point, Napoleon's forces were pretty tired. Winter had come and conditions were miserable. He anticipated both sides would settle into winter quarters, but Russia decided to try their hand at an unexpected winter attack.
What's Russia to the winter? What's the winter to Russia?
Took a heavy toll on both sides, including the vicious Battle of Eylau, fought in blizzard conditions. Men froze to death, and many deserted. The Russian artillery tore the French to shreds, and Napoleon himself was momentarily under risk of being captured.
I could smell him.
The French army was saved thanks to a legendary cavalry charge by Napoleon's flamboyant cavalry commander, Murat.
Dude, you see that guy?
Thanks to a legendary cavalry charge by Napoleon's flamboyant cavalry commander, Murat. After the horror inflicted on both sides, they decided it might be a good idea not to do any more fighting until after winter. Then, after winter came, and the fighting continued. The Russians were pushed back to Friedland, where Russian General Bennigsen made a bit of a blunder by positioning himself with the Alla River to his back. The French artillery were able to pin the Russians between the river and their concentrated gunfire, a major element in Napoleon's fighting style, and many Russians drowned as they tried to escape.
Oh man.
War of the Fourth Coalition. Victory, Napoleon.
Oh, the fourth? That should be the sweep. Sweep, 4-0. All right. That's it. Let's talk about it. All right. Whoa. That was a lot. That was a half an hour of dense Napoleon history. And that's only half of it, because it looks like we're going multiple parts here. So definitely look out for the part 2. But yeah, there was a lot. I learned a ton, especially about some of the specific interactions with some of the countries, which was great. That's what I wanted to be able to get out of this. So great. I'm glad they're nailing it. And hopefully you enjoyed this. Napoleon is so popular amongst, amateur historians. They love the guy. I saw that in the historical March Madness tournament that we had over on my channel back in March, and he went really far. People love Napoleon, and are always able to talk about that. And so many people are so educated and are able to just teach me a ton too, and just school me that way, because there's so much more to learn about this. What I've come away is he's and I've always thought he's a very complicated figure, right? I've again come down to the side largely that he used the revolution for a lot of his own personal ambition. It wasn't necessarily fighting for the ideals, but using those ideals to give himself something to stand on, to justify his rule and justify his actions. So it'll be interesting to see how this is going, because right now, up to this point in the video, Napoleon's doing very well. He just won his 4th, war of coalition, where he's defeating multiple people at the same time, and that's, why he gets so popular, seen as so popular, is he was fighting these wars against coalitions of powerful nations and succeeding pretty much at every stop there. Now, of course, in episode 2, they're probably going to get to when some not very good decisions are going to be made. And you see the beginning of an end, right? Of an empire that he was trying to build in the mold of his great heroes of history, and trying to emulate those people. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. Really interested to learn more about the Russia campaign that kind of is the beginning of the end for him there. And the whole ending stories of his exile and all that are going to be great to look at. So I'm definitely looking forward to it. So make sure that you are hopefully sub to the channel, enable those notifications so you know when I'm able to get back to this. And if you haven't subbed to my channel, again, I'd love to have you around. You can see all of the different type of historical content. I know a lot of you come for the reaction stuff, but anything history, this is going to be your home. In a fun setting for you. Another way to interact with our community is definitely join our Discord channel, which is very active with a lot of history-loving people who love to talk about anything with history and other stuff too, so definitely check that out. Again, the original video link is down below. Make sure you support them, give them another view, give them the like, give them the thumbs up. I'm so happy with the Oversimplified channel, just because it's hard to get educational content to basically be trending on YouTube, which is what happens every time they put out a video. It's top 5 trending, and that's awesome. And I hope that popularity of these channels, continues. We need more like this. And there are a lot of channels out there. One thing I hope you get out of my channel is hopefully learning about a lot of other channels, because there's a lot of other channels that are doing amazing stuff like Oversimplified and just need that more exposure. And hopefully you can see that from the channels that I like to promote on my channel here and get you guys more exposed to. So definitely do that. Again, links to a whole bunch of other things down there. If you're into gaming, I got a gaming channel, another YouTube channel that's for gaming. I stream on Twitch and do fun stuff there. I said about the Discord. We got a Teespring store with a bunch of fun history merch, and a bunch of other things that you could get involved with. All right, with that, again, look out for episode 2, and we'll see you next time. Bye.